Aaliyah, a 4-year-old girl, never imagined that losing her father would lead her to the cruel reality of being unwanted. One stormy evening, she found herself alone walking in rain, her tiny hands clutching a teddy bear, as the rain soaked her to the bone. Abandoned by her stepmother, the woman who should have been her protector, Aaliyah's world seemed to crumble. But when Officer Daniel Carter found her, neither of them knew that this chance meeting would uncover a heartbreaking truth and ignite a bond that would change both of their lives forever. In that moment, as Daniel's kindness met Aaliyah's innocence, a powerful story of resilience and love began to unfold, one that would leave even the coldest hearts in awe. What shocking truth lay behind Aaliyah's stepmother's cruel actions? And how did Officer Carter's compassion and strength turn this child's despair into hope and a new beginning? Stay tuned to find out. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from today. And if Aaliyah's story touches your heart, don't forget to subscribe. The rain pounded relentlessly against the windshield of Officer Daniel Carter's patrol car as he navigated the quiet suburban streets. Streetlights cast an eerie glow through the sheets of water, creating fleeting shadows that danced across the deserted sidewalks. Daniel sighed, his thoughts drifting to the empty house awaiting him at the end of his shift. It had been 2 years since the divorce, but the silence still echoed through every room. His daughter's laughter, once a constant melody, was now just a fading memory. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, pushing away the familiar ache of regret. As Daniel rounded a corner, his headlights illuminated a small figure trudging through the downpour. He blinked, certain his eyes were playing tricks on him. But there she was, a little girl, no more than 4 or 5 years old, soaked to the bone and clutching a ratty teddy bear to her chest. Daniel's heart leapt into his throat. He quickly pulled over, grabbing his flashlight before stepping out into the deluge. "Hey there, sweetheart," he called out gently, approaching slowly so as not to startle her. "What are you doing out here all alone?" The girl looked up at him, her big brown eyes wide with fear and brimming with tears. She trembled, whether from cold or fright. Daniel couldn't tell. Probably both. He crouched down to her level, holding his police jacket over her head to shield her from the rain. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm a police officer. My name's Daniel. What's your name?" The girl sniffled, hugging her teddy bear tighter. "Aaliyah," she whispered. Daniel smiled encouragingly. "That's a beautiful name, Aaliyah. Can you tell me why you're out here in the rain? Where's your mommy or daddy?" Aaliyah's lower lip quivered, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "And mommy doesn't want me anymore," she choked out. Daniel felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. How could anyone abandon such a precious child? "Oh, sweetheart," he murmured, fighting to keep his voice steady. "I'm so sorry. Let's get you somewhere warm and dry. Okay? We'll figure this out together." He gently guided Aaliyah to his patrol car, opening the back door and helping her climb in. As he buckled her seatbelt, he noticed she was shivering uncontrollably. Daniel shrugged off his jacket and wrapped it around her tiny frame. "There you go," he said, tucking it snugly around her. "That should help a little. Now, can you tell me more about what happened? Where's your house?" Aaliyah clutched her teddy bear, her voice barely above a whisper. "Daddy went to heaven, then knew mommy, said I had to go away." Daniel's heart broke for the little girl. He reached out and squeezed her hand gently. "I'm so sorry about your daddy, Aaliyah. That must be very hard. Can you tell me about your new mommy? Is she your stepmom?" Aaliyah nodded, her eyes downcast. "She's not nice like my real mommy was. She yells a lot. Today she said I had to leave and not come back." Daniel felt a surge of anger towards this unknown woman who could be so cruel to a child. He took a deep breath, reminding himself to stay calm for Aaliyah's sake. "You're very brave, Aaliyah. I promise I'm going to help you, okay? We'll make sure you're safe and taken care of." As Daniel pulled away from the curb, he glanced at Aaliyah in the rearview mirror. She looked so small and fragile, drowning in his oversized jacket. Her words echoed in his mind. "Mommy doesn't want me anymore." The pain in her voice struck a chord deep within him, bringing back memories he'd tried so hard to bury. He thought of his own daughter, Lily. She'd be about Aaliyah's age now. The last time he'd seen her, she'd had that same look of hurt and confusion in her eyes. "Why don't you want to live with us anymore, Daddy?" she'd asked, not understanding the complexities of the divorce. Daniel gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles turning white. He'd failed Lily, letting his work consume him until there was nothing left for his family. But here was Aaliyah, a child who needed him now. Maybe this was his chance to make things right, to be the protector he'd always strived to be. Aaliyah, he said gently, meeting her eyes in the mirror. I know you're scared, but I promise I'm going to do everything I can to help you. Can you tell me a little more about what happened tonight? Aaliyah sniffled, hugging her teddy bear close. After dinner, new mommy started yelling. She said I cost too much money, and she didn't sign up for this. Then she told me to get out and not come back. Her lower lip trembled. I didn't know where to go. I just started walking. Daniel felt a lump form in his throat. You did the right thing by staying where someone could find you, Aaliyah. I'm so glad I saw you. We're going to go to the police station now, okay? There are nice people there who can help us figure out what to do next. As they drove, Daniel's mind raced. He needed to contact Child Protective Services, file a report on the stepmother's neglect, and find a safe place for Aaliyah to stay. But most importantly, he needed to make sure this little girl felt secure and cared for. Hey, Aaliyah, he said, trying to keep his tone light. That's a pretty cool teddy bear you've got there. Does he have a name? Aaliyah looked down at her worn stuffed animal, a ghost of a smile crossing her face. His name is Mr. Snuggles. Daddy gave him to me for my birthday. Daniel smiled. Mr. Snuggles, huh? He looks like a great friend. I bet he gives the best hugs. Aaliyah nodded, squeezing the bear tighter. He helps me not be scared. Well, I'm glad you have Mr. Snuggles with you, Daniel said warmly. And you know what? You don't have to be scared anymore. I'm here to protect you. And so are a lot of other people who are going to want to help. As they pulled into the police station parking lot, Daniel saw Aaliyah's eyes widen with apprehension. He turned in his seat to face her directly. It's okay, sweetheart. This is a safe place. There are other police officers inside, just like me, and they're all here to help kids like you. Aaliyah bit her lip, looking uncertain. Am I in trouble? No, not at all, Daniel reassured her quickly. You haven't done anything wrong, Aaliyah. We just want to make sure you're taken care of and that you have a safe place to stay tonight. He helped her out of the car, noting how she clung to his hand as they walked towards the station entrance. The warmth of her tiny fingers in his palm stirred something protective in Daniel's chest. He squeezed her hand gently, silently vowing to do whatever it took to keep this little girl safe. As they entered the brightly lit lobby, Officer Sarah Martinez looked up from the front desk. Her eyes widened as she took in the sight of the soaked little girl clutching Daniel's hand. Oh my goodness, Sarah exclaimed, hurrying around the desk. What happened? Daniel gave her a meaningful look over Aaliyah's head. This is Aaliyah. She needs our help tonight. Can you grab some dry clothes from the donation box and maybe make some hot chocolate? Sarah nodded, understanding immediately. Of course. Come on, sweetie, she said, smiling warmly at Aaliyah. Let's get you into something dry and cozy. Aaliyah looked up at Daniel, hesitant to let go of his hand. He crouched down to her level. It's okay, Aaliyah. Officer Sarah is very nice. She's going to help you get warm and dry while I make some important phone calls. I'll be right in the next room if you need me. Okay. Aaliyah nodded slowly, allowing Sarah to lead her away. Daniel watched them go, his heart heavy. He had a lot of work ahead of him to sort out this situation, but one thing was certain. He wasn't going to let Aaliyah down. Officer Daniel Carter sat at his desk, the soft glow of his computer screen illuminating his tired face. It was well past midnight, but he couldn't bring himself to leave. Not while little Aaliyah slept on the worn couch in the break room, her tiny frame dwarfed by a borrowed police jacket. With a heavy sigh, Daniel turned back to his computer, determined to unravel the mystery of Aaliyah's family situation. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he dug deeper into public records, piecing together the puzzle of her life. Aaliyah Johnson, age 4. Father, Marcus Johnson, deceased. Mother, Tanya Johnson, also deceased. And then there was Linda Pearson Johnson, the stepmother who had cruelly abandoned a child to the streets. As Daniel delved further into Linda's background, a disturbing picture began to emerge. Linda Pearson had a history of failed marriages, each to wealthy men. She moved from one relationship to the next, always trading up, always seeking more. Got you, Daniel muttered, his eyes narrowing as he uncovered a series of suspicious financial transactions following Marcus Johnson's death. It seemed Linda had wasted no time in transferring large sums of money into offshore accounts. A soft knock at the door interrupted his concentration. Sarah Martinez, the officer who had helped get Aaliyah settled earlier, poked her head in. "How's it going?" she asked, her voice hushed. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in his gesture. "This woman, Linda, she's a real piece of work, Sarah. Married Aaliyah's father less than a year ago, and now that he's gone, she's trying to cut and run with everything." Sarah's expression hardened. "And Aaliyah?" "Just a complication in her grand plan," Daniel said bitterly. "No biological relation, no legal obligation to care for her. So she just threw her away." Sarah shook her head in disbelief. "How can anyone be so heartless?" Daniel turned back to his computer, pulling up another document. "It gets worse. Aaliyah's father, Marcus, died in a car accident 2 weeks ago. The insurance payout was substantial. I'd bet my badge that's what Linda was after all along." As Sarah absorbed this information, Daniel couldn't help but think of his own daughter, Lily. The pain of their separation, still raw after all this time, throbbed in his chest. He'd thrown himself into his work, thinking he was providing for his family. Instead, he'd lost them entirely. "Daniel?" Sarah's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "You okay?" He nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just thinking about Lily. Aaliyah's around the same age, you know?" Sarah's expression softened with understanding. She knew the story, how Daniel's ex-wife had won full custody, how his long hours and missed recitals had been used against him in court. "Have you tried reaching out recently?" Daniel shook his head. "Lisa made it clear she doesn't want me in Lily's life. Says it's too confusing for her." He swallowed hard, pushing down the surge of emotion. "Anyway, that's not important right now. We need to focus on helping Aaliyah." As if on cue, a small voice called out from the break room. "Officer Daniel?" Both officers hurried to check on Aaliyah. They found her sitting up on the couch, clutching her teddy bear, eyes wide with fear. "Hey there, sweetheart," Daniel said softly, kneeling beside her. "Did you have a bad dream?" Aaliyah nodded, her lower lip trembling. "I dreamed Mommy Linda came back and took me away." Daniel's heart clenched at the fear in her voice. "Oh, Aaliyah," he murmured, gently taking her small hand in his. "I promise you, that's not going to happen. You're safe here with us." As he comforted the little girl, Daniel felt a fierce protectiveness well up inside him. He couldn't change the past with Lily, but he could make a difference for Aaliyah. He could be the protector she so desperately needed. "Listen, Aaliyah," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you're taken care of. Okay? We're going to find you a safe place to stay, with people who will love you and treat you kindly." Aaliyah looked up at him, hope shining in her tear-filled eyes. "Promise?" Daniel nodded solemnly. "I promise." As Sarah helped Aaliyah settle back down to sleep, Daniel returned to his desk with renewed determination. He had a long night ahead of him, but he was ready for the challenge. Hours passed as Daniel dug deeper into Linda's background, building a case against her. The more he uncovered, the more his anger grew. How could anyone treat a child so callously? As the first rays of dawn began to peek through the blinds, Daniel leaned back in his chair, rubbing his tired eyes. He had enough evidence now to bring Linda in for questioning. But more importantly, he had a plan to ensure Aaliyah's safety. A knock on his office door startled him from his thoughts. Captain Rodriguez, his supervisor, entered with a concerned look on his face. "Carter, you've been here all night," the captain said, taking in Daniel's disheveled appearance. "What's going on?" Daniel quickly briefed his superior on the situation with Aaliyah and his findings about Linda. The captain listened intently, his frown deepening with each new detail. "This is serious, Carter," Rodriguez said when Daniel finished. "But you need to be careful. Don't let your personal feelings cloud your judgment." Daniel bristled slightly at the implication. "Sir, with all due respect, this isn't about me. It's about protecting an innocent child who's been abandoned and mistreated." Rodriguez held up a hand. "I know, and I agree that we need to act. But I also know your history, Daniel. I remember how hard you took it when you lost custody of Lily." The mention of his daughter's name sent a fresh wave of pain through Daniel's heart. He closed his eyes briefly, memories flooding back. Lily's first steps, her contagious laughter, the way she used to run to him with arms outstretched when he came home from work. And then, the look of confusion and hurt on her face the day he moved out. "You're right," Daniel admitted quietly. "I can't deny that this case, it hits close to home, but maybe that's why I'm the right person to handle it. I know what it's like to lose a child. I won't let that happen to Aaliyah." The captain studied him for a long moment before nodding. "All right, Carter. I trust your judgment. But I want you to partner with Martinez on this. Two heads are better than one, especially when emotions are involved." Daniel agreed, grateful for the support. As the captain left, he turned back to his computer, reviewing his notes one last time. He couldn't shake the feeling that this case was a turning point, not just for Aaliyah, but for him as well. As he walked to the break room to check on Aaliyah, Daniel felt a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced in years. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them. For Aaliyah's sake, and for his own. He found the little girl awake, sitting cross-legged on the couch and talking softly to her teddy bear. When she saw Daniel, her face lit up with a smile that melted his heart. "Good morning, Officer Daniel," she chirped, her earlier fears seemingly forgotten in the light of day. Daniel couldn't help but smile back. "Good morning, Aaliyah. Did you sleep okay?" She nodded, hugging her bear close. Mr. Snuggles kept the bad dreams away. "That's great," Daniel said, sitting down beside her. "Aaliyah, I need to talk to you about something important. Is that okay?" Aaliyah's smile faded a little, but she nodded bravely. Daniel took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "I'm going to go talk to your stepmom today," he began, watching her reaction closely. "I want to understand why she did what she did, and make sure she knows it wasn't okay." Aaliyah's lower lip trembled. Is she going to take me back?" Daniel shook his head firmly. "No, sweetheart. You're not going back to her. What she did was wrong, and we're going to make sure you're somewhere safe and with people who will take good care of you." Relief flooded Aaliyah's face, quickly followed by confusion. "But where will I go?" It was the question Daniel had been wrestling with all night. He knew the standard procedure. Aaliyah would go into the foster care system while they sorted out her situation. But the thought of this sweet, vulnerable child being passed from home to home made his stomach churn. Before he could second-guess himself, Daniel heard himself say, "How would you feel about staying with me for a while?" Aaliyah's eyes widened in surprise. "Really? I can stay with you?" Daniel nodded, a warmth spreading through his chest at her excited reaction. "If that's okay with you, and if the people in charge say it's all right, I have a spare room, and I promise to take good care of you until we figure everything out." Aaliyah launched herself into his arms, nearly knocking him over with the force of her hug. "Yes, please. Can Mr. Snuggles come too?" Daniel laughed, hugging her back. "Of course Mr. Snuggles can come. We wouldn't want to separate you two." As he held the little girl, Daniel felt a sense of rightness settle over him. He knew there would be challenges ahead, confronting Linda, navigating the legal system, adjusting to life with a child in his home. But for the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Later that morning, as Daniel prepared to leave for Linda's house, he couldn't shake a nagging worry. What if he was too emotionally involved? What if his desire to protect Aaliyah was clouding his judgment? He shared his concerns with Sarah as they got ready to head out. She listened patiently, then placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Daniel," she said firmly, "your compassion is what makes you a great cop. Yes, this case is personal for you, but that's not a bad thing. It means you'll fight that much harder to make sure Aaliyah gets the justice and care she deserves." Her words bolstered his confidence. As they drove to Linda's house, Daniel's resolve strengthened. He would confront Linda, not just as a police officer enforcing the law, but as someone who understood the precious value of a child's trust and love. The house they pulled up to was impressive, a large, modern structure with manicured lawns and a luxury car in the driveway. It was a stark contrast to the image of little Aaliyah trudging through the rain just the night before. As they approached the front door, Daniel took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation to come. He rang the doorbell, hearing the chimes echo inside the house. After a moment, the door swung open, revealing a woman who could only be Linda. She was stylishly dressed, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed, but there was a coldness in her eyes that made Daniel's skin crawl. "Yes," she said, her tone impatient. "Can I help you?" Daniel held up his badge. "Mrs. Johnson? I'm Officer Carter, and this is Officer Martinez. We need to talk to you about your stepdaughter, Aaliyah. Linda's expression flickered, surprise, then annoyance, quickly masked by a look of concern. Oh, has something happened? Please come in. As they followed Linda into an opulent living room, Daniel fought to keep his anger in check. This woman had everything, and yet she'd thrown away a child like she was nothing more than an inconvenience. Mrs. Johnson, Daniel began, his voice steady despite his roiling emotions. Can you explain why your 4-year-old stepdaughter was found wandering alone in the rain last night? Linda's eyes widened in feigned shock. What? Aaliyah was outside? I had no idea. I thought she was in her room. She must have run away. Daniel's jaw clenched at the blatant lie. Mrs. Johnson, Aaliyah told us that you told her to leave and not come back. Can you explain that? The facade of concern dropped from Linda's face, replaced by a look of cold disdain. Look, she said, her voice hard, I never asked for this. I married Marcus because he was successful and charming. I didn't sign up to be a mother, especially not to someone else's brat. The callousness of her words hit Daniel like a physical blow. He took a step forward, his voice low and intense. That brat is a 4-year-old little girl who just lost her father. She needed love and support, and instead, you threw her out like trash. Linda sneered, unrepentant. She's not my responsibility. I have my own life to live. Besides, who's going to care about one little orphan? I care, Daniel said, his voice ringing with conviction. And so does every decent person who hears about what you've done. You had a choice, Mrs. Johnson. You could have been a mother to a child who desperately needed one. Instead, you chose cruelty and selfishness. As Sarah began to read Linda her rights, Daniel felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had confronted the darkness that had threatened Aaliyah's future, and in doing so, he'd taken the first step toward healing his own past wounds. Walking out of Linda's house, Daniel knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be legal battles, adjustments, and challenges he couldn't yet foresee. But he also knew, with a certainty that resonated deep in his soul, that he was ready to face whatever came next. For Aaliyah, and for the father he still hoped to be, Daniel was ready to embrace this second chance with open arms. After clearing it with Child Protective Services and his superiors, Daniel found himself driving home with Aaliyah in the back seat, her few belongings packed in a small bag beside her. As they entered his house, Daniel felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. It had been so long since a child's laughter had filled these rooms. Let's get you settled in, he said, leading Aaliyah to the spare room. Tomorrow we can go shopping and get some things to make it feel more like your own space. That night, as Daniel tucked Aaliyah into bed, she looked up at him with sleepy eyes. Officer Daniel, she mumbled. Yes, sweetheart. Will you read me a story? Daddy always read me a story. Daniel's heart melted. Of course I will. What story would you like? And so began a nightly ritual. Each evening, Daniel would read to Aaliyah, doing his best to use silly voices just as her father had done. It wasn't long before bedtime became his favorite part of the day. Over the next few weeks, as the legal proceedings against Linda began to unfold, Daniel and Aaliyah settled into a routine. They'd have breakfast together each morning, with Daniel making silly faces with fruit on Aaliyah's pancakes to make her giggle. In the evenings, they'd draw pictures together or bake cookies, flour inevitably ending up on both their noses. One Saturday afternoon, as they sat at the kitchen table coloring, Aaliyah looked up at Daniel with a serious expression. Officer Daniel, she asked. Yes, Aaliyah. Can I call you Daddy? Daniel felt his heart skip a beat. He took a deep breath, fighting back the sudden rush of emotion. Aaliyah, he said gently, I'm honored that you want to call me that. But I want you to know that I'm not trying to replace your real daddy. He'll always be your daddy, and it's okay to miss him and love him. Aaliyah nodded solemnly. I know, but I think my real daddy would be happy that I have you now, too. Daniel smiled, blinking back tears. I think you're right, and I would be very, very happy if you want to call me Daddy. Aaliyah's face broke into a radiant smile, and she threw her arms around him. I love you, Daddy, she whispered. As Daniel held her close, he marveled at how this little girl had changed his life so completely in such a short time. The house that had once felt so empty was now filled with laughter and love. Meanwhile, the case against Linda was progressing rapidly. Daniel worked tirelessly with the district attorney's office, providing all the evidence he had gathered about Linda's neglect and abandonment of Aaliyah. As news of the case spread through the community, public outrage grew. Linda, who had once been a fixture in local society circles, found herself shunned by her former friends. Her country club membership was revoked, and invitations to social events dried up. One evening, as Daniel was preparing dinner, he received a call from the district attorney. "We've got her, Carter," the DA said, excitement evident in his voice. "Linda's been charged with child endangerment and neglect. She's facing serious jail time." Daniel let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "That's great news. What about her assets?" "The judge has frozen them pending the outcome of the trial," the DA replied. "If she's convicted, which seems likely given the evidence, she'll be ordered to pay substantial restitution. Most of it will go into a trust for Aaliyah's future." As Daniel hung up the phone, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Justice was being served, and Aaliyah's future was secure. He turned to find Aaliyah standing in the doorway, a concerned look on her face. "Is everything okay, Daddy?" she asked. Daniel knelt down, pulling her into a hug. "Everything's great, sweetheart. How about we celebrate with ice cream sundaes for dessert tonight?" Aaliyah's face lit up with joy, and as they laughed together, scooping ice cream and piling on toppings, Daniel knew that this was exactly where he was meant to be. The day of Linda's sentencing arrived, and Daniel sat in the courtroom, his heart pounding. Aaliyah was staying with Sarah for the day, spared from having to face her stepmother again. As Linda was led into the courtroom, Daniel was struck by how different she looked from the polished, arrogant woman he'd first encountered. Her designer clothes were replaced by a plain suit, her perfectly styled hair now limp and dull. The judge's voice rang out in the silent courtroom. "Linda Pearson Johnson, you have been found guilty of child endangerment and neglect. Your actions were not just a failure of responsibility, but a betrayal of the most basic human decency." Linda stood, her face pale, as the judge continued. "I hereby sentence you to 5 years in state prison. Furthermore, you are ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $500,000, to be placed in a trust for Aaliyah Johnson's care and future education." As the gavel fell, sealing Linda's fate, Daniel felt a complex mix of emotions. There was satisfaction that justice had been served, but also a deep sadness for the pain Aaliyah had endured. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for a statement. Daniel spoke briefly, his words carefully chosen. "Today, justice was served not just for Aaliyah, but for all children who deserve love, protection, and care. Let this be a reminder that our responsibility to the most vulnerable among us is sacred, and those who shirk that responsibility will be held accountable." As he drove home, Daniel's thoughts turned to Aaliyah. He couldn't wait to see her, to hold her and assure her that she was safe and loved. When he walked through the door, Aaliyah ran to him, throwing her arms around his legs. "Daddy, you're home." Daniel scooped her up, hugging her tightly. "I sure am, princess. How about we have a special movie night to celebrate?" As they snuggled on the couch later, Aaliyah tucked securely under his arm, Daniel marveled at how far they'd come. The little girl who had once been so scared and alone was now thriving, her laughter filling his home and his heart. He knew there would be challenges ahead. Aaliyah would have questions about her past, and there would be difficult conversations as she grew older. But Daniel was committed to being there for her, every step of the way. As Aaliyah drifted off to sleep, her head resting on his chest, Daniel whispered a quiet promise. "I'll always be here for you, sweetheart. Always." And in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of their little family, Daniel knew that he had found his true calling. Not just as a police officer protecting his community, but as a father, nurturing and guiding the precious life that had been entrusted to him. The journey ahead might not be easy, but with love, patience, and understanding, Daniel was confident that together, he and Aaliyah could face anything life might throw their way. As the credits rolled on the movie, Daniel looked down to find Aaliyah fast asleep. He gently lifted her, carrying her to her room. As he tucked her in, surrounded by the stuffed animals and colorful drawings that now decorated her space, he couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed in such a short time. The spare room that had once been a stark reminder of his loneliness was now a vibrant testament to new beginnings. Aaliyah's presence had breathed life back into his home and his heart. The next morning, as they sat at the breakfast table, Aaliyah munching on her favorite cereal, Daniel decided it was time for an important conversation. Aaliyah, he began gently, do you remember how we talked about the judge making a decision about your stepmothers? Aaliyah nodded, her spoon pausing halfway to her mouth. Well, the judge made that decision yesterday, Daniel continued. Your stepmother did a very wrong thing when she sent you away, and now she has to face the consequences for that. Aaliyah's brow furrowed. Is she in trouble? Daniel nodded. Yes, sweetheart, she is. She has to go away for a while to think about what she did wrong. But the most important thing is that you're safe now, and you never have to worry about her again. Aaliyah was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Then she looked up at Daniel, her eyes wide and earnest. But I have you now, right, Daddy? You won't send me away. Daniel felt his heart constrict. He reached across the table, taking Aaliyah's small hand in his. That's right, Princess. You have me, and I promise I will never, ever send you away. We're a family now, you and me. Aaliyah's face broke into a brilliant smile, and she hopped down from her chair to give Daniel a hug. As he held her close, Daniel silently renewed his vow to always protect and cherish this precious child who had brought so much love into his life. Over the next few months, Daniel and Aaliyah settled into their new life together. There were challenges, of course. Aaliyah sometimes had nightmares about being abandoned again, and Daniel would sit with her, soothing her fears and assuring her of his love. But there was also so much joy. Aaliyah's first day of kindergarten, with Daniel taking countless photos of her in her new backpack. Their first Christmas together, decorating the tree and baking cookies for Santa. Weekends spent at the park, Aaliyah's laughter ringing out as Daniel pushed her on the swings. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Aaliyah leaned against Daniel's side. Daddy, she said softly. Yes, sweetheart. I'm glad you found me that rainy night. Daniel wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. Me too, Aaliyah. Me too. As the sky turned from pink to purple, Daniel reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From that fateful rainy night to the courtroom where justice was served, and through all the quiet moments of love and healing in between. As the first stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, Daniel made a silent wish. Not for himself, but for Aaliyah, that she would always know how loved and cherished she was, that she would grow up strong and confident, and that she would never again know the pain of abandonment. Daddy, Aaliyah's voice broke into his thoughts. Yes, Princess. Can we have ice cream? Daniel chuckled, planting a kiss on top of her head. Sure thing, sweetheart. Race you to the kitchen. As they ran inside, their laughter echoing through the house, Daniel knew that whatever challenges the future might hold, they would face them together. For in each other, they had found not just a family, but a home. As the seasons changed and life settled into a comfortable rhythm for Daniel and Aaliyah, a new chapter was about to unfold in their story. It was a crisp autumn morning when Daniel received an unexpected phone call that would set in motion a series of events that would change their lives once again. Hello, Daniel answered, balancing his phone between his ear and shoulder as he prepared Aaliyah's lunch for school. Daniel? It's Lisa. The voice of his ex-wife sent a jolt through him. They hadn't spoken in years, not since the bitter custody battle that had torn their family apart. Lisa? Is everything okay? Is Lily all right? Daniel's mind immediately went to their daughter, worry creeping into his voice. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Lily's fine, Daniel. But she's been asking about you. A lot, actually. I think it might be time for you two to reconnect. Daniel felt his heart skip a beat. He dreamed of hearing those words for so long, but now that the moment was here, he found himself overwhelmed with a mix of emotions. Hope, fear, excitement, and anxiety all swirling together. Really? Lisa, I don't know what to say. Of course, I'd love to see Lily. But are you sure? Lisa's voice softened. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Daniel. I've seen the news stories about you, and that little girl you took in. Aaliyah, right? It's clear you've changed. Maybe I was too harsh before. Lily deserves to know her father. As they talked, making tentative plans for a meeting, Daniel felt a tugging on his sleeve. He looked down to see Aaliyah, her backpack slung over her shoulder, ready for school. Daddy, we're going to be late, she said, her impatience clear in her voice. Daniel smiled, mouthing 1 minute to her before turning his attention back to the phone. Listen, Lisa, I have to go. But thank you. This means everything to me. After hanging up, Daniel knelt down to Aaliyah's level. Sorry about that, princess. That was a very important phone call. How about we talk about it on the way to school? As they drove, Daniel carefully explained to Aaliyah about Lily. He'd mentioned his other daughter before, but now he shared more details about their separation and how he hadn't been able to see her for a long time. But now, he said, glancing at Aaliyah in the rearview mirror, it looks like I might get to see her again. How would you feel about meeting your big sister? Aaliyah's eyes widened with excitement. I have a big sister? Really? Can we see her today? Daniel chuckled at her enthusiasm. Not today, sweetheart, but soon. We'll need to take things slow, okay? It might be a little confusing or scary at first for all of us. As he dropped Aaliyah off at school, giving her a big hug and a kiss on the forehead, Daniel couldn't help but marvel at how much his life had changed. A year ago, he'd been a lonely, workaholic cop with a broken family. Now, he was a father again, with a chance to heal old wounds and bring his family back together. Over the next few weeks, Daniel worked with Lisa to arrange a meeting with Lily. They decided on a neutral location, a local park with a playground where Lily would feel comfortable and at ease. The day of the meeting arrived, and Daniel felt a nervous energy thrumming through his body. He'd spent hours the night before looking through old photo albums with Aaliyah, showing her pictures of Lily and telling her stories about when Lily was little. As they arrived at the park, Daniel spotted Lisa sitting on a bench near the playground. Next to her was Lily, now 9 years old, her legs swinging as she sat. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. She'd grown so much, but he'd recognize those eyes, his eyes, anywhere. Ready? He asked Aaliyah, who nodded bravely, clutching his hand. As they approached, Lily looked up. For a moment, father and daughter just stared at each other, years of separation stretching between them. Then, hesitantly, Lily stood up. Dad, she said, her voice small and uncertain. Daniel felt tears prick at his eyes. Hi, Lily Pad, he said, using the old nickname he'd given her as a baby. It's so good to see you. There was a moment of awkwardness as they stood there, neither quite sure how to bridge the gap. Then Aaliyah, with all the boldness of a 4-year-old, stepped forward. Hi, I'm Aaliyah. I'm your little sister, she announced proudly. Lily's eyes widened in surprise, darting between Aaliyah and Daniel. Little sister. Daniel knelt down, so he was at eye level with both girls. Lily, this is Aaliyah. I adopted her a little while ago. She's been really excited to meet you. Lily looked at Aaliyah curiously. Do you live with my dad? Aaliyah nodded enthusiastically. Ah, Daddy reads me stories every night and makes funny faces with my breakfast and takes me to the park to feed the ducks. Something flickered in Lily's eyes, a mix of emotions Daniel couldn't quite decipher. Was it jealousy? Sadness? Longing? But then Aaliyah, oblivious to the complex dynamics at play, grabbed Lily's hand. Want to go play on the swings? She asked. A small smile tugged at Lily's lips. Okay, she said, allowing Aaliyah to pull her towards the playground. As the girls ran off, Daniel turned to Lisa. Thank you for this, he said softly. I can't tell you how much it means to me. Lisa nodded, her expression a mix of emotions. She needs her father, Daniel. And I think maybe I was wrong to keep you apart for so long. Seeing you with Aaliyah, it's clear how much you've changed. They sat on the bench, watching as Aaliyah and Lily swung side by side, their laughter carrying across the playground. It was a bittersweet moment for Daniel. Joy at seeing his daughters together, mixed with regret for all the time he'd lost with Lily. So, tell me about Aaliyah, Lisa said. How did that happen? Daniel spent the next hour recounting the story of how Aaliyah had come into his life. The rainy night he found her, the case against her stepmother, and the decision to adopt her. As he spoke, he could see Lisa's expression softening. You're a good father, Daniel, she said finally. I'm glad Lily will have the chance to know that side of you. As the afternoon wore on, Daniel found himself pushing Lily on the swings, just as he had when she was little. She was quiet at first, but gradually began to open up, telling him about school, her friends, and her new hobby of playing the violin. Maybe, Maybe you could come to my next recital? Lily asked hesitantly as Daniel gave her another push. Daniel felt his heart swell with emotion. I'd love that lily pad. I'd love that more than anything. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, it was time to say goodbye. Lily surprised Daniel by giving him a quick, fierce hug before running back to her mother's car. Aaliyah waved enthusiastically, calling out, "Bye, big sister. See you soon." On the drive home, Aaliyah chattered excitedly about Lily, asking when they could see her again. Daniel listened with a smile, his heart full. It had been a good day, a first step towards healing old wounds and building a new kind of family. Over the next few months, Daniel worked hard to rebuild his relationship with Lily, while also maintaining the strong bond he'd formed with Aaliyah. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of jealousy from both girls, times when Lily felt like an outsider in Daniel and Aaliyah's established routines, and occasions when Aaliyah felt insecure about her place in Daniel's heart. But slowly, surely, they found their rhythm. Daniel made sure to have one-on-one time with each girl. He attended Lily's violin recitals, cheering loudly from the audience. He took her out for ice cream dates where they could talk and reconnect. With Aaliyah, he maintained their bedtime story routine and their special Saturday morning pancake breakfasts. One particularly memorable day came when Daniel decided to teach both girls how to ride bikes. Lily already knew how, but she proudly helped demonstrate for Aaliyah, holding the back of her little sister's bike as Daniel jogged alongside. "You've got it, Aaliyah." Lily cheered as Aaliyah pedaled wobbly down the sidewalk. "Just keep going." When Aaliyah finally managed to ride on her own, both Lily and Daniel erupted in cheers, rushing to hug her as she beamed with pride. It was moments like these that made Daniel's heart feel like it might burst with love and gratitude. Seeing his daughters together, supporting each other, was more than he'd ever dared to hope for. Of course, there were still challenges. The first time Lily overheard Aaliyah call Daniel Daddy, a flicker of hurt crossed her face. Daniel sat down with her later that day to talk about it. "Lily," he said gently, "I want you to know that Aaliyah calling me Daddy doesn't change how I feel about you. You're my daughter, and I love you just as much as I always have." Lily was quiet for a moment, fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. "But you live with her," she said softly. "You get to be her dad all the time." Daniel felt a pang in his heart. "I know, sweetheart, and I'm so sorry for all the time we lost. But I promise you, I'm here now. I'm your dad, always and forever. Nothing will ever change that." He pulled her into a hug, feeling her small arms wrap tightly around him. "How about we start having a weekly daddy-daughter date," he suggested. "Just you and me. We can do whatever you want. Get ice cream, go to the movies, anything." Lily's face lit up at the idea, and from that day forward, their weekly dates became a cherished tradition. As the months passed, Daniel also worked on improving his co-parenting relationship with Lisa. They began to communicate more openly, sharing in Lily's triumphs and working together to address any issues that arose. It wasn't always smooth sailing, but they were both committed to putting Lily's needs first. One day, as summer was turning to fall, Lisa surprised Daniel with an invitation. "We're having a birthday party for Lily next weekend," she said over the phone. I think it would mean a lot to her if you and Aaliyah could come." Daniel was touched by the gesture. "We'd love to," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Lisa." The party was a joyous affair, with Lily's friends running around the backyard, playing games and eating cake. Daniel watched with pride as Lily blew out her candles, making a wish with her eyes squeezed shut. Later, as the party was winding down, Lily approached Daniel, clutching a piece of paper in her hands. "Dad," she said, a hint of nervousness in her voice, "I made this for you." She handed him the paper, a carefully drawn picture of 4 stick figures. 2 tall ones labeled Mom and Dad, and 2 smaller ones labeled me and Aaliyah. Above the picture, in bright crayon letters, were the words "My Family." Daniel felt tears spring to his eyes as he looked at the drawing. "Oh, Lily," he said, pulling her into a hug. "It's beautiful. Thank you so much." As he held his daughter close, Daniel caught Lisa's eye across the room. She gave him a small smile and a nod, a gesture of acknowledgement and acceptance. In that moment, Daniel felt a sense of peace wash over him. They weren't a conventional family, but they were finding their way. That night, as Daniel tucked Aaliyah into bed, she asked sleepily, "Daddy, Are we a real family now? With Lily and her mom too. Daniel smoothed her hair back, planting a kiss on her forehead. We are, sweetheart. We're a real family. It might look a little different from other families, but that doesn't make it any less real or any less full of love. The next big milestone came when Lily asked if she could start spending more time at Daniel's house. After much discussion between Daniel and Lisa, they agreed to a new custody arrangement where Lily would spend every other weekend and one night a week at Daniel's. The first night Lily stayed over was a mix of excitement and nerves for everyone. Daniel had set up the guest room for her, letting her pick out new bedding and decorations to make the space feel like her own. As bedtime approached, Daniel found himself with both girls in Aaliyah's room. All three squeezed onto Aaliyah's small bed as he read a bedtime story. Aaliyah was curled up on one side of him, while Lily leaned against his other shoulder, both girls listening intently as he did his best voices for each character. When the story was finished, Daniel tucked each girl into their respective beds. As he was saying goodnight to Lily, she grabbed his hand. "Dad," she said, her voice small in the darkness. "I'm really glad I get to be here more now." Daniel felt his heart swell with love. "Me too," Lily pad. "Me too." As the weeks turned into months, and then into a year, their blended family found its rhythm. There were birthday parties where both girls blew out candles together, holiday celebrations that brought everyone together, and quiet evenings at home where the sound of laughter filled every room. Daniel watched with pride as Lily and Aaliyah's bond as sisters grew stronger. They had their squabbles, of course, but more often than not, they were each other's fiercest defenders and closest confidants. One evening, as Daniel sat on the porch watching Lily push Aaliyah on the swing in the backyard, he felt a sense of contentment wash over him. This was his family. Unconventional, perhaps, but bound together by love, forgiveness, and the willingness to keep trying even when things got tough. The years seemed to fly by, each one bringing new joys and challenges. Aaliyah blossomed into a bright, curious child with a passion for art. Her room became a gallery of colorful drawings and paintings, each one proudly displayed for all to see. Lily, now in middle school, discovered a talent for soccer, spending her afternoons on the field and her evenings regaling the family with tales of her matches. As Aaliyah approached her 10th birthday, Daniel knew it was time for a conversation he'd been preparing for since the day he adopted her. One quiet evening, after Lily had gone home to Lisa's, he sat down with Aaliyah in the living room. "Sweetheart," he began gently, "there's something I want to talk to you about. It's about your birth parents and how you came to be part of our family." Aaliyah looked up at him, her eyes wide and curious. "Is this about the night you found me in the rain?" Daniel nodded, surprised. "You were very little, so I thought you must have forgotten about it." "You remember that?" "Not really," Aaliyah admitted. "But I've heard you and Lily talk about it sometimes. And I know I'm adopted." Daniel took a deep breath and began to explain, as best he could, the circumstances that had brought Aaliyah into his life. He told her about her birth father's passing, about her stepmother's neglect, and about the rainy night when he'd found her alone and scared. Aaliyah listened intently, her brow furrowed in concentration. When Daniel finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Daddy," she said finally, her voice small, "do you think my birth dad would be mad that I call you Daddy now?" Daniel felt his heart constrict. He pulled Aaliyah into a tight hug. "Oh, sweetheart, no. I think your birth dad would be so happy to know that you're loved and cared for. Love isn't a limited resource, you know? There's always room for more in our hearts." Aaliyah nodded against his chest, then looked up at him with a mischievous glint in her eye. "So, does that mean I can get a puppy to love too?" Daniel laughed, ruffling her hair. "Nice try, kiddo. We'll talk about puppies another time." As Aaliyah grew older, she became more curious about her birth family. With Daniel's support, she began to explore her heritage, learning about the culture and traditions of her birth father's family. It wasn't always easy. There were days when Aaliyah struggled with feelings of loss and confusion. But Daniel was always there to listen, to comfort, and to reassure her of his unconditional love. Lily, too, faced her own challenges as she entered her teenage years. The back and forth between her parents' homes sometimes left her feeling torn and frustrated. There were arguments and slammed doors, nights when Daniel found himself at a loss for how to reach his eldest daughter. But through it all, The bond between Lily and Aaliyah remained strong. In fact, it was often Aaliyah who could get through to Lily when no one else could. One particularly difficult evening, after a heated argument with Daniel about curfews, Lily stormed off to her room. Daniel was about to follow when Aaliyah stopped him. "Let me talk to her, Dad," she said, her voice far more mature than her 12 years would suggest. Daniel watched in amazement as Aaliyah knocked on Lily's door, slipping inside when granted permission. An hour later, both girls emerged, Lily's eyes red from crying, but a small smile on her face. She approached Daniel hesitantly. "I'm sorry, Dad," she said softly. "Aaliyah helped me see, well, a lot of things. I know you're just trying to keep me safe. I didn't mean to yell." As Daniel hugged his daughters, he marveled at the wisdom and compassion they developed. They might not be related by blood, but they were sisters in every way that mattered. The years continued to pass, bringing with them new milestones and memories. Aaliyah's Sweet 16 celebration, where she insisted on 2 cakes, one to share with friends, and another for a quiet family dinner with Daniel, Lily, and Lisa. Lily's high school graduation, where Daniel found himself sitting next to Lisa, both of them teary-eyed with pride as their daughter accepted her diploma. Through it all, Daniel continued to grow as a father and as a person. He learned to navigate the complex dynamics of co-parenting with Lisa, to balance the needs of 2 daughters at very different stages of life, and to create a home where both girls felt safe, loved, and supported. There were hard times, of course. The night Lily came home past curfew, smelling of alcohol, and Daniel had to find the balance between discipline and understanding. The day Aaliyah received a cruel comment about being adopted and came home in tears, forcing Daniel to confront the harsh realities his daughter sometimes faced. But for every difficult moment, there were countless joyful ones. Family game nights that dissolved into fits of laughter. Holidays where the house was filled with the smell of baking and the sound of carols. Quiet evenings where they all piled onto the couch, watching movies and simply enjoying each other's company. As Lily prepared to leave for college, Daniel found himself reflecting on the journey they'd all taken together. The night before Lily was set to move into her dorm, the family gathered for a special dinner. Lisa was there too, and as Daniel looked around the table at the faces of the people he loved most in the world, he felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "I'd like to make a toast," he said, raising his glass. "To family. Not the family we're born into, but the family we choose and the family we build. To second chances and new beginnings. To love that grows and changes and overcomes all obstacles." There wasn't a dry eye at the table as they clinked their glasses together. Later that night, as Daniel was helping Lily with some last-minute packing, she turned to him with a serious expression. "Dad," she said, "I want you to know, I'm really glad we found our way back to each other. And I'm glad Aaliyah found her way to us too. I can't imagine our family any other way now." Daniel pulled her into a tight hug, blinking back tears. "Me neither," Lily pad. "Me neither." The day Lily left for college was bittersweet. Daniel and Aaliyah stood in the driveway, waving until Lily's car was out of sight. As they turned to go back inside, Aaliyah slipped her hand into Daniel's. "She'll be okay, right, Dad?" she asked, a hint of worry in her voice. Daniel squeezed her hand. "She'll be more than okay. She's strong and smart and kind, just like her little sister." Aaliyah beamed up at him, and Daniel marveled at how quickly she was growing up too. Before he knew it, she'd be the one packing for college. As the years continued to pass, Daniel watched with pride as his daughters grew into remarkable young women. Lily excelled in college, discovering a passion for environmental law that led her to law school. Aaliyah's artistic talents blossomed, her work gaining recognition in local art shows and eventually leading to a scholarship at a prestigious art school. Daniel's relationship with Lisa continued to evolve as well. The animosity of their early post-divorce years had long since faded, replaced by a genuine friendship and mutual respect. They found themselves sharing proud parent moments over coffee, commiserating over the challenges of raising young adults, and presenting a united front when Lily or Aaliyah needed guidance. Before Daniel knew it, he was walking Lily down the aisle at her wedding. As he placed her hand in her soon-to-be husband's, he caught sight of Aaliyah, standing as maid of honor, her eyes shining with happy tears. In that moment, Daniel's heart felt so full it might burst. At the reception, as Daniel watched his daughters twirl on the dance floor, laughing and radiant with joy, he felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to find Lisa standing there, a glass of champagne in her hand and a wistful smile on her face. "We did good, didn't we?" she said, nodding towards Lily and Aaliyah. Daniel nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "Yeah," he managed. "We really did." A few years later, it was Aaliyah's turn to walk down the aisle. As Daniel prepared to give her away, he found himself thinking back to that rainy night so many years ago when he'd found a scared little girl huddled in an alley. How could he have known then that she would become one of the greatest blessings of his life? "Ready, Daddy?" Aaliyah asked, squeezing his arm and bringing him back to the present. Daniel looked at his daughter, radiant in her wedding gown, and felt a familiar mix of joy and bittersweetness. "Ready as I'll ever be, sweetheart," he replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. As they began their walk down the aisle, Daniel caught sight of Lily in the front row, her own children squirming excitedly beside her. His grandchildren, the thought still amazed him sometimes. The years continued to roll by, bringing with them new joys and challenges. Daniel retired from the police force, finding new purpose in volunteering at a local youth center. He delighted in his role as grandfather, spoiling Lily's kids rotten and later, Aaliyah's as well. There were hard times too. The loss of Lisa to cancer hit them all hard, reminding them of the preciousness and fragility of life. But even in grief, they found strength in each other, their bonds as a family stronger than ever. On Daniel's 70th birthday, Lily and Aaliyah threw him a surprise party. As he looked around at the gathering of family and friends, at the life he had built and the love that surrounded him, Daniel felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. Later that evening, as the party was winding down, he found himself sitting on the porch swing with his daughters on either side of him, just as they had so many times over the years. "You know," he said reflectively, "there was a time in my life when I thought I'd lost everything. My marriage had fallen apart. I was estranged from you, Lily, and I threw myself into work because I didn't know what else to do." He paused, looking out at the sunset. "I never could have imagined then the life I have now, the family we've built." Aaliyah leaned her head on his shoulder. "You saved me that night, Dad. But in a way, I think we all saved each other." Lily nodded in agreement. "We're not a conventional family, that's for sure. But I wouldn't have it any other way." Daniel wrapped an arm around each of his daughters, pulling them close. "Neither would I," he said softly. "Neither would I." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Daniel Carter sat surrounded by the love of the family he had built. From the darkest moments of his life had come the greatest joys, the deepest loves, the most profound sense of purpose. It hadn't always been easy. There had been struggles and heartaches, misunderstandings and arguments. But through it all, they had persevered. They had chosen love again and again. They had built something beautiful and enduring out of broken pieces and second chances. And as Daniel sat there, his daughters by his side, and the sounds of his grandchildren's laughter drifting from inside the house, he knew with absolute certainty that he was exactly where he was meant to be. This was his family. This was his home. This was his happily ever after. If Aaliyah's journey touched your heart, let us know in the comments below. We hope her story reminds you that even in the face of abandonment and cruelty, kindness, courage, and love will always shine through. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories like this one.